Hello, hello, everyone, and good morning. Or if you're my good friend here, it is evening already for him. But either way, hello, all, and welcome to the next session. And we have got Dr. Andre Jones. He is going to be doing a session called Fostering a Purpose Driven Culture in the ECC. My friend, thank you very much for being here again, and take it away.
Hello, everyone. Yes, it is definitely nighttime. I certainly appreciate Ricardo this year considering that. Last year it was very challenging considering the time slot I got. It was like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. We were right in the middle of preparing for the World Cup, so I was kind of working during the day quite a bit. So aside from technological issues, we did make it through. So I will give a little notice here to begin with that because of the distance and sometimes the latency and the bandwidth as video issues here in the country, I will cut the video quite a bit just to preserve a lot of that bandwidth throughout the presentation. But I'm very happy to be back again this year. I don't get to the US very often. My last trip was actually for APCO 2023 and completing my CPE in January, CPE 13. Yay. But I do really enjoy doing these types of presentations. Virtual, obviously, I like to do them in person as well. But just want to say again, thank you. I think this is a good platform. It makes it so accessible to anyone and everyone in the 911 profession. So I really enjoy that. I think this presentation specifically is that I'm going to do today is a kind of continuation of the one that I did before on organizational effectiveness. That presentation, as I mentioned, was almost like 5 different segments that could be done across, different presentations. So I decided to combine a few of these options and see how it turned out. I think you'll enjoy it. I am a fairly new PhD compared to some of my other colleagues like Dr. Joe. I know Dr. Lilly is also here. And we all have our different take on, presenting type things when it comes to research, but I am very much operational. I still run and work in a communication center, which I shared in my last presentation. But I've, been in operations, pretty much all my life, which is, oh my God, like 28 years, I think. Starting in a very small communication center with less than a dozen people, now overseeing over 200, it makes a significant difference. I will say this, that because these are practical strategies and a lot of the things that we'll be talking about through the entire next couple of days, it's important just to take a moment to realize and understand that when we do talk about these things, we don't necessarily advocate best practices, right? And we do have people that, we'll work with and they'll come back and they say, well, my agency only has 1 staff, so that won't work for us. Or, we have 200 people, so we could never. So a lot of what we're sharing, I think, is to be taken personally. I go back to a really good movie that I watched a long time ago that I really, really like, Marvel fans or DC fans may remember. This particular character said, save one. So it's really about fixing you. And, hopefully after that, maybe your light shine and covers other. And then that domino effect is what ultimately is going to help us assist in improving culture across the organizations. So that's where I want to start off with. Again, for all the other speakers that are going to be here this week, I definitely look forward to hearing from you, as much as all of us do. Shout outs to Roxana, of course. Roxanne and Samantha. We got Rich, all these mega rock stars that have been doing this for very, very long time. And we definitely appreciate you giving your time. We're all very busy. Myself, working through the World Cup. Now we're doing a lot of humanitarian things, a lot of travel, and I think this is an opportunity for all of us to just say, take a step back and again, share these experiences to help others. And again, in my instance, will be a very, as much as I can, kind of pragmatic way. So I want to start here just with a quote. Your work is going to fill a large part of your life, and the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work. When we're really talking about this, we're just suggesting really that satisfaction at work goes beyond financial rewards and external validation. I think that this should mean that there's a deeper intrinsic satisfaction when it comes to aligning your work with your personal beliefs. And I think initially, what we should appreciate is the fact that that's where a lot of what we need as far as defining what purpose. Dr. Sho said earlier, this is what does it take in order to be great? Sometimes it takes purpose, sometimes it takes meaningfulness. And I think that sometimes we just forget that. We take for granted what we do every day, saving lives. We get to do this. This is some amazing work. And it really means that sometimes we just need to take that step back and say, you know what, this great work that I'm doing, it's a preference of quality, it's quality of life. And sometimes in trying to protect and preserve ourselves in order to continue in that purpose, we just want to acknowledge that and how we can best integrate that into our work life. Work life balance, I can tell you 100% is very, very difficult. And I will share some of the experiences that I've had. And hopefully, if you don't learn anything else, a really good tip of how best to do and work and operate within that framework of work life integration. So I think when we talk about purpose driven culture, what we're really talking about here is an idea that we want to foster a shared sense of mission and purpose in our team members. We want to collaborate with each other. We want to have a collective commitment. We want to have something beyond sometimes our individual purpose, but something that allows us with a culture. That means all of us together within the organization to drive us, to especially strengthen us during our challenging times. But something that we've really been focusing on, I think, over the last couple of years, especially since COVID, is well being. I know Dr. Lilly is doing a lot of research on that. I'm really trying to develop in that area as well. Doing my IO psychology work, very interesting to me. But when you bring it all in, it's about the experience of that greater sense of fulfillment and job satisfaction and overall life satisfaction, that you are able to have when you have that purpose. So I think that's what we're going to try to focus on today, the culture, because we want to be able to recognize and acknowledge the fact that it takes all of us to be able to do that. And sometimes when people step out of line and they're not contributing to that culture, we need to be able to hold people accountable. I think for many years we've not done that because we're short staffed. We have these staffing issues, and we're going to be in crisis as long as, well, who knows? But I think we're all trying to improve that. But at the same time, I think we're cutting corners when it comes to having stability in the workplace. And I think, again, sometimes that's because we forget why we are there. And I think it's important to have that in order to continue and to do really good work. So why is this important? 73% of employees who report sense of purpose at work are engaged compared to only 23% of those who don't. These are probably the only facts and figures that I'm going to give in this presentation, as far as research is concerned. And basically, it's very true. I think when we know why we are at our jobs, we understand our purpose, it very well helps us in our effectiveness to be good at what we do, be comfortable with what we do and our lives, and perform within the confines and constructs that are there for us in our job. Why is it significant? Because the workplace refers to us as having this area of sense of meaning. And for us, it is about saving lives, protecting our responders and stuff like that. It's more than a buzzword. I think we have different people that talk about this, just like well-being and wellness and stuff like that. But we want to make sure that we incorporate this into something that makes it integrated into our work life. So it's something that we can live with every day. So I know everyone knows Adam Tim, very good friend. He does a lot of speaking as well. And he talks in his book on purpose-driven leadership, very basic stuff. And I think this resonates or should resonate with most everyone. Why do we exist? How do we behave? What do we do? How will we succeed? What is important right now? Who must do it? Yeah, KPIs, measuring stuff like that is kind of irrelevant for our discussion today. But when we come back to what should be the focal point of accomplishing our mission, sometimes the leaders, they start focusing so much on meeting targets and performance stuff, they sometimes forget the effort that goes into it, the behavior, the attitudes, and that is significantly more to allow us to expand on our capacity and our capabilities and even resilience in the organization, where we're not so much worried totally about the numbers. Numbers are not everything. I myself am not a quantitative person, so I can say that. But as a qualitative person, I'm about the feeling, the touching, the experiences, understanding of what goes into those things that are making us the organization that we feel that we should do. And this is kind of an example of that. Her Excellency Dr. Hernan is the chief medical person of the Ministry of Public Health here in Qatar. Hamid Medical Corporation, which is the public health system, manages and operates under the Ministry of Public Health. And this happens to be the mission: the safest, most effective, most compassionate care. That is what we are charged with each and every day. And this is what the culture should be. So, again, you can apply this potentially to any of your missions, right? So, whatever you do every day, you wake up in the morning, you're trying to find out what your value added. I don't really want to go to work, and this. So you're just basically saying, this is what my goal for today is: to be safe, to be effective, be compassionate. You go through the day. At the end of the day, you do a little personal evaluation. Was I safe today? Was I effective today? Was I compassionate today? So when we also do that as leaders and managers and supervisors, most of the policies, the procedures, the protocols that we develop are also aligned and in tune with this very purpose and this mission. Everything that we're doing when we're talking about governments, we're sitting around the table making action plans. We're doing stuff for the World Cup, whether it's the Medical Command Center and the humanitarian missions. We're always keeping these things in mind. And that, for this purpose, is a shared sense of purpose, to make sure we're all in the actions that we're doing safe, effective, and compassionate. Now, a lot of those don't always believe that, these things pertain to us, right? I remember working in an organization, as some of us call them agencies, where a person was fired. And when they were fired, the person that delivered the message of their termination told them that the organization has decided that, what you've done is not to be tolerated, and we no longer believe you should be employed with us. And I was thinking, as I was sitting at the table with the person, well, I work for the organization and I didn't decide that. But technically, you actually did, because the culture of the organization has set policies and procedures that has said that tardiness or lateness is not an acceptable behavior. So you're essentially altogether agreeing from an accountability perspective what the culture of that is. Now, that is about the termination for someone who's being late or tardy, but that could actually go for any of the policies and procedures. Now, do they have to stay that way? No. There's always an opportunity to reevaluate those things to make sure what is going on now is aligned with those things as far as the mission, the vision, and the purpose of the organization. Right. Here's another example. Let's say that, your personal goal is not necessarily, as it should be, to be completely involved in the corporate mission, but you have a mission that you want to pay bills. Your mission is to come to work, and your purpose is to come to work so that you can afford, childcare, or to put your child through college or something like that. Well, as part of that, you're not necessarily aligned with that purpose if you do something that jeopardizes your job. If you are not caring at work, if you're not compassionate, if you're not effective, then of course, culturally, from a shared sense of purpose perspective, you are going against that. And then therefore, you're jeopardizing your own personal mission. So again, it's hit or miss. We're trying to really discuss about aligning our individual goals of an employee so it's clear with what the mission of the company is, or the organization, or the agency, in order to boost the motivation and engagement as best we can. Hope that makes sense. I think a lot of this has to do with a sense of connection as well. There's the individuals, and then of course there is the people we're trying to connect with to make sure we do have this this shared sense of purpose. I did a study on this recently as part of my dissertation down in New Orleans, and really got to understand from the qualitative interviews that I did that regardless of the amount of stress that was going on in the organization, all of the issues that were going on, short staffing, whether it was issues with technology, management, this, blah, 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 everything that goes on in every agency, it's the employees together, their sense of connection to each other, their strong sense of purpose, and their connectedness that motivated them. It was a deeper commitment to each other than necessarily the organization that gave them that purpose. And as such, Their productivity was really well. It's very good. And a lot of them, they had a lot of senior staff that stayed in the positions, not because they had continuous commitment because they couldn't afford to go anywhere else. They stayed because they liked their job and they liked the people that they worked with. And I think that that's really important. So when people in an organization see that there is significance with them working with other people who are also value the same things they do, not necessarily toting the corporate line, but they come together because they like their jobs and they love what they do and they talk about that. They have discussions. There's this open line of communication between them and sometimes the management. They don't always get what it is that they need, but that collaboration is what is fostering the spirit within the team, and the employees are united in that. So it goes a little bit beyond that to allow them to be able to do the work that they need to do. And it continues to cultivate and manifest itself and improve civility along the way, which I think sometimes in some centers is very lacking. Now, we do not have to acknowledge that within our particular environment, the emotional toll on dispatchers is very, very high. We have lots of things that we're dealing with: medical emergencies, distressing situations. Even their work hours are very much erratic. Our shift work, disrupting our circadian rhythms, leading to sleep disturbances. All of this is causing us to create these challenges within the workplace. So, what are the things that we believe, or at least in my experience, that I have learned that I would like to share with you, that are strategies, very simple, hopefully, to allow us to foster this purpose-driven culture? So, all the leaders in the room, right? Leadership involvement is critical. They are the ones who articulate the vision that ties to the day-to-day work of the employees and the organization's broader mission. They're there to communicate and also, as much as they can be transparent. I know this is very difficult. I've been in difficult positions where I want to share things and you just can't, but there's still a way to communicate so that people are not left in the dark, so that you can build upon the challenges and or successes related to the mission as a result of ongoing things you may have that are going to improve the success or the environment or the culture, in this instance, of the organization. You have to have some type of feedback mechanism as well to allow the leaders to receive input from the employees respectfully, about their experiences with the mission. If there's something going on and you feel that we're not as safe as we probably should be, then say something. Allow the leadership to be able to respond to that, investigate it, address the risk, and maybe create an initiative if needed in order to improve upon that. Because again, we always want to improve. But also, we want to make sure that leaders acknowledge and celebrate employee contributions. This can include recognition, even something as simple as thank you notes, right? I know we can't all afford to have large budgets with large banquets every year, but I think that it is something that we can do that allows us to appreciate the meaningful achievements of our staff. Now, what about the employees? Obviously, the leaders can't do it all, right? So the employees also need to be involved. They're the heart of the organization. I think some of us leaders sometimes forget that. Sometimes even I want to go in the office and kind of close my door, and not necessarily have that, because sometimes there are things related to the mission and our culture that we're bound to. We all have a master. There's someone that we have to report to, and I get disappointed at times myself personally when I'm not able to provide the feedback that I think that would make someone's day better. But that's not really always what the staff want, right? They just want some types of communication, some type of feedback channel. And we have to understand between the employees and the leadership what that mechanism or forum is. It could be a suggestion box, surveys, yes, but we have to be mindful of survey fatigue. We can't be giving out a survey every 30 days and then not having any actions to allow the staff to see what the result of that is. Otherwise, what was the point? And I think more and more people become very numb to them. So you have to, find another way. So, talking to the staff, what way would you like to be able to discuss, your issues, problems, and concerns, and how best do you think it would be able to us to address them? But also understanding this, for employees to be involved, it does take time. You can't expect to go in a meeting on Monday and the world's problems be solved by Friday. It just doesn't happen that way. There has to be a lot of time to allow for any of the actions to come to fruition. There has to be discussions, sometimes at a higher level. Sometimes you have to triage them to see what things we can implement and what things are sustainable. Sometimes I think we're scared to put in certain types of actions because we know that they won't be sustainable. They're not going to last over time. I think that that's a fear for us. But we need to be able to participate in these reviews and the updates to make sure that we're all on the same page. How do we do that? Obviously, communication. Now, every organization is a little bit different practically with respect to how they do this. Sometimes it's regular staff meetings, maybe it's once a month, maybe it's once a quarter, but there needs to be an opportunity always to discuss the mission, the vision, the purpose of the organization. This can be done in a way that you have, for example, you're visually showing it. So when you walk in the door, you see, okay, what is my goal for the day? Safe, effective, compassionate. Okay. And when you leave, you see the same thing. And then you talk about those things and self evaluate those things as far as process improvement and try to continue to work on those. And as time goes on, use these cues to, again, reinforce this message. But it needs to come out. You can't just hear about the vision and mission on the first day of your job and never hear about it again. If you've been at the company 20, 25 years, you should be, at some point, I would think, at least reconnected to it. I think a lot of us, again, this week, will be talking a lot about wellness. Again, depending on the size of the organization, this is going to come in different ways. I think that the powers that be in our government institutions are really trying to do what they can in order to help support us in this endeavor, to provide for agencies small and large the means to be able to do this. But it does take work, whether it's an advocate within the agency, an ambassador in the agency, to go out there and find the grant, find the money, whatever it is, in order to put whatever the initiative is that we need. So it does require us to be able to not just say, okay, there's counseling sessions or mental health support. We have to be able to know how to get it and to use it to our advantage. I'll say this, having especially used it twice, it's also important to recognize that EAP within itself, or any type of counseling, is not necessarily about them addressing and readdressing that specific trauma that you're experiencing behind the headset. Sometimes they're there to help you understand and manage your mind. And you may find that the stress that you have actually has nothing to do with the job at all. So I think that sometimes we want to say, well, I need to talk to someone that knows about 911 dispatch. Well, maybe you don't. Maybe this is an opportunity to explore maybe what your underlying issues are. And then when those things surface, determine, as far as triage is concerned, what you need to do and move forward. Again, agencies of different sizes have things like peer support programs. Now, if there isn't one in your own agency, if you're the only dispatcher, you're going to talk to yourself. You could, but there's other areas within the country, for example, that are doing this and offering it regionally. So, the next county has one and they have a peer support program and they have an agreement. And now you've got 3 or 4 agencies that are sharing a group of colleagues, which is also a good idea. Another thing you can do with wellness and support is just have challenges, whether it's a virtual one. I do a lot of workouts in gyms, so I try to go on Saturdays and be involved in challenges. But you can do those, within your agency as well, to challenge yourself physically and mentally in order to be able to overcome and, again, get your mind away from, work all the time. I think, again, by and large, one of the things that we seem to be missing around in our organizations is recognition. I think that recognition and rewards sometimes has a negative connotation because of how we go about determining who gets the awards and who is recognized. I think all of us believe, in our hearts and our minds and our souls that we all deserve, to be recognized. But sometimes we're not always happy when, Mary Beth is up on the stage getting her award and that she's called out 15 times and she, is really bad on the radio, and I'm better, So I think there's an opportunity there when you're really talking about, how these things are done, especially in the confines of culture, as far as the organization and what the impact of having certain types of programs will do. Again, it's that open communication. What is the standard? What is the level of commitment? What are we valuing in this program, and how we will best, obviously, to do this out? But even just a purpose-driven leadership or some type of award, an annual award to recognize those and celebrate those who have impacted the organization from a cultural perspective, not necessarily the dispatcher who dispatched all the calls in 90 seconds or had the best EMD or cardiac life save. There are other things that we can also do to acknowledge the work of our staff. And with that, I think that that would help us do more as far as empowering us as individuals and the culture of our organizations. Because I think, and the research obviously supports this, that employees that are empowered understand their roles and how they connect to the organization. So when they see the impact of their work, it's a source of motivation and empowerment. I remember working through the COVID and working 16 hours. Sometimes I went to bed and I didn't actually sleep. I slept with the light on, which you're actually technically awake. It was like sleep deprivation for like 4 months. But I kept thinking, like, what is this? What is the big picture? What it is that I'm involved in? I kept thinking, wow, this is actually bigger than myself. This is an opportunity to make such a larger impact. And I think that that helped me a lot through that. I've learned some other things since then as well about taking care of myself, and that probably wasn't the best idea. But again, at the time, that was the best thing that I could do to help me stay motivated day in and day out in order to make sure that everyone on the team was equally motivated and positive about the changing conditions that was going on through COVID. One of the other things we need to do is empower employees to provide input and suggestions. I mentioned this before. I think as leaders, myself, I personally love to have input. And I work in an environment that wasn't always the case. So I can understand and appreciate that struggle, especially new leaders who come into an organization. They're empowered, they're emboldened to make change, but they're met with people who have been socially traumatized or organizationally traumatized by former managers and leadership. And it's like, just give them a chance, to be able to turn things around. So you want that input, and you want that, even if it's negative, you have the naysayers, you have the devil's advocates. That's actually some good stuff. Now you need to turn that around and make it, as constructive as you can, and turn that risk or what it is they're saying or not saying into something a little bit more positive. But it doesn't mean you shut them down and you don't want to hear it. You just need to learn and use those as opportunities. So just as a side thing, a knowledge check, basically on what we've talked about at this point. What of these do you think is the most practical strategy for cultivating a purpose-driven culture in a high-pressure field? Essentially what we're saying. Is it leadership development, A, employee involvement, B, C, support and recognition programs, or D, all of the above? Anyone? D? Absolutely, all of the above. It takes all of these things. So one of the other things I would like to say in talking about this purpose is how emotional intelligence comes into this. I think the emotional intelligence we talk about quite a bit, and I think it is a very foundation to having a very good culture inside of a communication center. Joe has a book on it. I have read it. I had some excerpts as well from it, and many of us believe in the value of having that, and potentially in the future doing the best we can to hire people who are emotionally intelligent, because we know they're in fact very resilient with respect to this position. So in the last finals of this presentation, just to highlight some of these things, again, the role of emotional intelligence. I think empathy and compassion is probably one of the highest things that I would rate, as well as emotional connection and leadership effectiveness. I think, but for the ability of myself to have had a lot of traumatic things happen to my life, that I can take a step back and try to put myself in other people's shoes and to be self-aware of not about how I act, but how my actions, attitudes, and even facial expressions, how they impact others, that I would not have had this opportunity to be able to say, okay, this is affecting the culture. They can't even feel like they can walk past my office because they know I'm going to have this look on my face. And I mean, it all kind of adds up. So I think, again, in each environment, each workspace, this ability to not to be self-aware, but also to be very in tune with and take the temperature regularly of your environment says a lot about you as a leader, but also the ability to stand up and say how, as an employee, I can help. If you're acknowledging, the presence or trying to attempt to hold someone accountable for not being in line with your culture and to create that workplace that is safe and that is civil, then we need to be able to have again those lines of communication that allows us to be able to have conversations with same staff, level staff, or even leaders. And I think that that's important. And our emotional intelligence, I believe, helps us to be able to do that a little bit more than just speaking out of the side of our face. So I think some of the things that we can potentially do in reflection on this is just understand that highly emotional intelligence can act as a deterrent specifically for workplace bullying. I know we don't necessarily like to use that word. We're more leaning toward things of discussions of being disrespectful and civility. But I think that these are things we need to acknowledge still occur in the workplace today. And they're very things, microaggressions, if you want to call them that, very simple, subtle things that people that we're impacting and influencing them. And we've invested so much time in getting them in the job. And then our culture is so toxic that it's like, well, why did why did I come here and work? And it took me 7 months to get here. And the only thing you've been doing is making me want to quit, it's, what is it? Lynching? Is it, some type of cultural, jumping over the, I don't know what you call it. But I think we need to, as best we can, stop that. And again, hold each other accountable for doing those type of things. I know some organizations do a lot with supervisory, communications training officers. One of the things we do in our organization is specific mentoring program, which is a little different than a training officer because you're paired with this person and you're guiding them through and hoping to develop them through their, not just their policies and procedures, but helping them integrate into the work environment using those emotional intelligence skills. I think that's very important that we do that. When we're emotionally intelligent, I cannot tell you, well, Dr. Joe can tell you, that it allows you to become resilient so much. Again, I think some of the things that I went through, as many of us go through in this work environment, prepares us in certain ways. Sometimes we don't know necessarily how it's going to manifest us, but as things add on, as some of us who believe in higher powers and stuff like that, there's not necessarily that much more that can allow us, to be, beaten or defeated. You have this sense of, what next? Like, I'm ready for the next challenge. You're reducing your level of stress, and because you're able to identify the source and remove yourself from that stress, right? So you're not necessarily thinking about the stress itself, but you're finding ways to reduce the effects, mitigation, and taking time as much as you can for yourself, having fun sometimes, improving your life integration, your work life integration, in order to continue that cycle of resilience. So, research and experience have actually shown that having a clear sense of purpose significantly contributes to an individual's resilience, just like emotional intelligence. And when you know why you do what you do, it provides a driving force to overcome challenges. And again, I say, if you're not reminded of that, if you haven't seen it on a wall and you haven't discussed it, I'm sure it's written somewhere. Go look at it. If you don't have that shared sense of purpose as far as your institution, your agency's mission, then you have your own. And sometimes you just need to take a step back and you need to think about that and say, okay, why am I here? What did I, how can I help? And I would say this as well, is if you get to a point where those things are no longer significant to you and you don't have that ability to bounce back, and you've done things like the peer support, then there's that opportunity that you start looking for other options within the profession. I didn't always do what I do as far as working in the communication center. There's stuff outside, there's selling of chairs, there's doing corporate training for dispatchers. There's still a lot of opportunities to be involved in the 911 profession and still help with the overall purpose of the 911 profession, but not necessarily be within the confines of your organization. So of all the things, hopefully, one of the most important things I would say is this, the 80-20 rule. I started this really honing in on this probably right in the middle of our second or third wave, I think. because I just felt really beat, really run down, and I really needed to take time and evaluate my life. Um, I needed me time. I had forgotten about me. And I realized that in order for me to continue on the path of greatness and to continue to help and to support our organization and our purpose, I needed to take care of myself. And I think the best way to do that is to take space and time to talk to yourself about your journey, about your meaning, about your purpose, and your growth in this life, because you only have one, right? So, my space cognitively that's been challenging me is to continue to go to school. Again, though I am very much operational, I continue to go to school so I can learn and grow and then share those experiences with other people. I don't really intend to be an academic, though I would love to write a book. I've done some research and stuff like that, but not enough to make me like a full fledged, doctor, professor, but, by my schooling. But also outside of that, I need something emotionally and physically, something that I can disconnect to. So I do a lot of gym. If you follow me on Instagram and Facebook, you'll see that I spend quite a bit of time, because that's my time. And I wouldn't say upset. It's very discouraging, and I really have to watch my face when it comes to meetings that are abruptly scheduled during those times where I've committed to, certain type of things. But thankfully, there are other classes and stuff that I can take. But all to say that you have to save something for yourself. You can never give 100% of everything, right? So whatever you're doing, whatever your purpose, whatever your job, my opinion, my advice is to always save something for yourself. How can we otherwise determine our moods? I love the mood meter. I think I shared this at my APCO 2023 conference. It was a little bit different. We did it with the Slido, which was fun. But I think it's just an assessment tool. I think, there's different ways that organizations can use something like this, but it's really taking the temperature of the room, either before your shift, after your shift, maybe once a week, and just seeing kind of where you stand. And this will help you, as a start, just really think about, okay, am I living my purpose? Am I living in my journey? Am I doing what I'm supposed to do with respect to anything? It's just something very simple. Again, a lot of agencies don't necessarily have the ability to do peer support. A lot of agencies don't necessarily have the ability to have mental health resources because it may not be important at the departmental or the municipality level. But you are all on this conference and you work with a lot of people that have a lot of resources that they can share that are not necessarily associated with any specific entity, but it's something that we're all welcome to between NINA and APCO and all the other organizations that are represented here in the conference that allow us to be able to do what is necessary in order to protect ourselves, in order to allow us to be able to give into the purpose and the culture that we want in our environment. Because if we're ill, if we're, what is one of these things on here? Irritated, if we're panicked, if we're frustrated, oftentimes about things that have nothing to do with the job at all. These are things that we're doing, bringing to the job, because 70% of our life is work. We want to make sure that we're in tune with that. So it's about balancing that and understanding with self-awareness and appreciating the fact that we really need to be in tune with that. And lastly, obviously, managing workloads, supervisory support, making sure the supervisors are trained to provide the support, guidance, and recognize when there is, in fact, something wrong. Maybe you don't have a mood meter, but I think most of you work with people in your organization to know when something just is not right. And you don't want to pry. I get it. You don't want to be in a position where you're trying to be helpful and you're going to be seen as being a gossip or something like that. But there are ways. And again, it's about that empathy, that ability to be compassionate and to be understanding with whatever the person is going through and have that good connection with them as best you can. So right before closing, I do have another little knowledge check with respect to resilience. What do you think this one is? It is the ability to bounce back and thrive in the face of adversity. It is not about avoiding difficult situations, but rather the ability to navigate and overcome challenges. It is to save something for yourself, or D, all of the above. C's and D's. Yes, it is definitely all of those things. So yes, fostering a purpose-driven culture is very essential to the Emergency Communications Center. I think if we're able to be empathetic, if we're able to understand ourselves and appreciate that we all have a shared sense of purpose, we can definitely work in a better space to improve civility, to improve not just our own individual well-being, but everyone else's well-being, because we're not bitter, we're not jaded, we're not too stressed, we're not attacking, we're not lashing out, those type of things. And then we're also able to be resilient within that. Your purpose is not the thing you do, it is the thing that happens in others when you do it. Again, thank you for this opportunity to speak with you. And experience, again, is my perspective, being in this NAMA profession as long as I have. And I'll say something that one of my colleagues from CPE 13 said, that purpose driven is people over process. So I think we need to be mindful that we need to be a little bit more people focused and mission driven. That's it.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. As always, excellent information. And there was a question that
Yeah,
is
I'm just
here.
saying that.
So let me go over here to it, and then I'm going to go ahead and press the start answering, and it'll pop up on the screen here as well. And that question is, how do you get people, both other dispatchers and leaders, to acknowledge that we need to and should want to improve the culture?
Good question. I think sometimes, though, taking the temperature of the room, I think that it takes someone to stand up, an advocate, an ambassador, a champion, to say enough is enough. I think some of it is going to the leadership and first saying that you have identified a problem, and also providing a potential solution. There's nothing I like more than when someone comes to me and talks about a problem that they actually have a solution for. And then we listen and we try to vet those. And some of it's, again, this, we want to get to a point where we're acknowledged and we believe that there's something we should do about it. Okay, so what do you think is the best mechanism to be able to have this discussion? Is it a roundtable? Is it a survey? Is it something like that? And then start exploring those opportunities within the group and amongst the team members. I think it's something that a lot of our agencies are experiencing. Sometimes we forget about it because we're so busy. We're all, trying to beat the clock. We're trying to match the KPIs, and we're trying to hire and retain as best we can. But what we're not sometimes seeing is that the culture, the incivility, these type of things is what's preventing us from moving forward, because we're just so we're tired. So I think that's what it is. We're tired. We want to fix this, and as best we can open up some type of communication that allows us to be able to openly discuss it respectfully uh, at the ranch. Yeah, let's go to the ranch and talk about it there.
There you go. All right.
Let's
Perfect.
fall.
Excellent. All right, let me switch it back over here to the chat really quick. So I everything that you were saying, man, on point. I loved it, and I've been, for those watching and listening right now, I've been writing down notes in my journal and stuff here,
You can
and
have the
these
slides.
questions. Yeah, yeah, well, yeah, that as well. But just to, for those who are watching and listening and everything, one of the questions that I put on here is, how important is empowering and engaging your employees? And I think it's very important because, for myself, when I was still in dispatch, there were some ideas that I had that might have sounded off the wall in the beginning, but because my leadership, that is, the director and deputy director, who also came from, one of my partnering teams and everything, which we thought was the best. Like, we're going to have someone in leadership that comes from where we come from, and which was awesome. But they gave us that chance, and even though I had some of those ideas that were kind of off the wall, which was, just for example, our silent observer phone calls that we were taking, I ended up turning it into a PDF form to make it electronic so that we could do it super fast and then just email it off to whichever agency needed to get it. So for me, it was very important for my my center, but also those in leadership to be able to empower us and give those ideas because it ended up helping out.
For sure. Yeah, and those are the things that I challenge people to say, how can I help? And that's a good example, Ricardo, because I think that we can do it respectfully and constructively. And if we're bringing solutions to the table, again, if I'm the leader, I'm thinking to myself, I can't think of everything. And when someone comes to me, I'm like, oh, that sounds good. Run with it. I'm here to support you. I'll sign off as your sponsor. And that's great. I think that those things are good. But I think not all of us, unfortunately, are in positions where we have leaders that are like that. Some people are just, I want to be here until I retire. And honestly, I feel like sometimes you want to just say, look, if you're not going to do it, at least let me do it and you co-sign on it, right? And some of us are lucky and we're able to do that, and be the champion or the informal leader without the title, and to move initiatives and stuff forward. But I think we can't give up. I know that many times I've tried to put things forward, probably not the most respectful way, but I've learned. Now I try to hone those things in and think about how best to do those things from my position. But yeah, I think we don't need to give up. We need to sometimes take a step back and evaluate what's going on. And again, like you said, what does that mean for everyone else?
Yeah, yeah, exactly, and especially going forward too with the way you had mentioned, looking back at my notes here, how the importance of recognition and rewards, and knowing the difference, but which is which, and how to put it out there, and because a lot of times you don't always get that, but it's I love the fact that people are doing that more and more, so
Yeah,
that's definitely a
absolutely.
good thing there too. Well, again, my friend, thank you so very much. It is evening over there, so
Thank you.
enjoy the rest of your evening.
Yes, I
And
will.
as always, an excellent time. I need to get you on an episode so that we can talk more about a lot of
Yes,
this stuff
yes.
and put it out there even more so. So enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
being here and for everything that you do for our profession. And for everyone else, I will be bringing you to the next session, and we'll see you here in just a bit.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.